Hey everyone, Nick Lang with Sixpence Productions here. Hope you're having a happy new year, start to 2025. Hope you had a good Christmas. I'm just hanging out here by our wonderful electric fireplace. On last week's Movie Fix, I gave my thoughts on some minor changes that could have really improved the movie Red One. Um, this week, I just want to give my thoughts on Cobra Kai. Cobra Kai was a great show when it first started. The first season of Cobra Kai, when it was on YouTube, Red Premium? No, YouTube. It was YouTube Red, right? They were trying to do their foray into creative content was really good the first season. The second season, after it was bought by Netflix, was pretty good, and the third season was pretty good up until the end. Cobra Kai should have ended at the third season, and I would have changed the ending of the third season as well. I understand why creatives and studios will continue a successful TV show. Obviously, I get it. The show Supernatural, in case you didn't know, was originally slated for and pitched for a 5-season arc, ending the way the 5th season of the show does, with the defeat of the big bad guy, the yellow-eyed demon, and wrapping up the Winchester storyline. Obviously, now it's on season 19 or whatever it is. Anyway, the series of Cobra Kai should have ended after the third season. I would have played the ending much differently. See, one of the problems both with the show and with continuing television series is that you have to keep elevating stakes. Certain genres do that better than others. Now, there's different ways to elevate stakes, and maybe we'll get into this in other posts or videos. It doesn't have to be physical, but in the case of an action show, and Cobra Kai is basically a retro 80s sports drama, it tends to be physical and emotional, and they're tied together right in that way. So the problem is that with the 80s retro sports drama, you can only elevate it so high. This is not an epic. This is not Lord of the Rings. This is not Dune. This is not Star Wars. This is not, so if you look back at the original movies, the first movie, kid getting bullied at karate tournament. Second movie, same kid goes over to Japan, now ends up in an actual life or death confrontation, but in a way that's fairly plausible and believable. Third movie brings it back down, karate tournament. In the same way, once you get past season 3 of Cobra Kai, it's just too ridiculous. First of all these martial artists are horrible people, right? I just finished watching season 6, and the tournament erupts into a 10-minute or 15-minute long brawl between all these different schools that are. So all of these people, including the adults and instructors, are mentally unhinged. The martial arts have not actually improved them emotionally or spiritually or mentally, because they all fly off the handle at the slightest provocation, because that's what the show needs to have action. But it ends up with this unintentional consequence that these people all look like psychos, in a way that makes it very hard to root for them, because it's not just one guy that's maybe out of temper. Like, it started out with Johnny Lawrence struggling in the first season to become a better person, and he decides, that was different. That's one guy that has specific character flaws that we can appreciate. All right, this guy's prone to violence. This guy's prone to hitting people. He thinks he's this badass 80s action star, and that's one thing. Having a whole school of people at a tournament erupt into a violent brawl that's most assuredly ending with some of them seriously injured or what have you over, I don't even remember. See, that's the thing. It doesn't even stick, but it's just absurd, and it makes them all look like complete monsters. That was a little aside. Anyway, here are my thoughts on how Cobra Kai should have ended on season 3. So, brief spoilers. Season 3, as it's written, ends with the kids from Cobra Kai, who are now under the tutelage of John Kreese, the sensei from the first Karate Kid movie. They go to Daniel LaRusso's house, where the good school, the Miyagi-Do kids are, and they have this huge fight. It's ridiculous, but that's fine. They're kids, first of all, and that's where you get your action. It makes sense that a bunch of dumb teenagers would think that the best thing to do is show up and assault a bunch of other teenagers. The problem comes that in the show, as it's written, both Johnny and Daniel separately show up to fight Kreese, beat the crap out of him, and then leave with no real resolution. It breaks suspension of disbelief. And one of the reasons is not because the police don't get involved or whatever, but it's because we've seen these characters now over 3 seasons. It feels like they're not growing and they're not having actual completed arcs. It feels like they're stuck in these ruts and they don't end up feeling like real people. People can be stuck in ruts, don't get me wrong, but when you're doing storytelling and everything else is curated, you have to curate these things as well. So here's what I would have done. Daniel goes home and finds the aftermath of this fight, and he's furious. At the same time, Johnny goes to confront Kreese, as it is in the show. And Johnny shows up, and Johnny sees his son training there with this guy that is basically an abusive father figure to him. Finally, 3 seasons of character development for Johnny snap in, and he realizes he's done this. He really understands for the first time that he has carried on this cycle of poor fatherhood, poor relation, of of abuse, essentially, and allowed it to also begin to infect his own son. So Johnny has a change of heart. Kreese goads Johnny, come on, fight me, prove yourself, whatever, Emperor Palpatine type things, right? But Johnny looks at Robbie and he gives a very heartfelt, still Johnny Lawrence in tone and language, apology to Johnny. And he says, I'm not doing this anymore. I care about these kids. This is wrong. There's got to be a better way to do this. And he leaves. As he's leaving, Daniel shows up, and Daniel is intent on kicking the shit out of John Kreese because, rightfully so, in some regard, his children were put in danger because of this guy. And so now we have these 2 men, they've flipped from where they were at the beginning of the season. And they flipped in very believable and realistic ways. Johnny has realized something. He's had growth. He realizes that you can't punch your way out of every problem, and you shouldn't want to. Daniel has been trying to play the game, as it were, in these karate schools and this and that, but he's also realized that that's not working, that they're both men are lacking, and the other character has what they lack, which is kind of what the show was originally trying to do and still is trying to do, but it's not right? So Daniel goes and he fights Kreese. There's you get your big serious action scene. But I would have really liked for Johnny to go get the police. I really think that it would have shown the most growth if Johnny was like, no, it's time to handle this stuff like adults. We aren't dumb teenagers anymore. And Kreese gets put away. You know, you can still have Daniel win the fight or whatever. It doesn't really matter. Although I would have liked it if he didn't. I think it would have been more interesting if he also got beat up. And then I would have ended the season, but also the series on these 2 guys just having a conversation about how they both need to keep growing and how they respect each other. And I think that would have been a much more satisfying end.